Making movies isn't easy, and the vast majority of hit Hollywood blockbusters go through countless iterations in the scripting stage before they finally arrive at the screenplay fit for shooting. And the annals of cinema are undeniably littered with terrible first draft ideas that were thankfully nixed before filming began, like Jurassic Park 4 was going to be written to include gun-toting mutant dinosaurs, and Creed 2 featured a ghostly appearance from Apollo Creed, for example. Bad ideas, very bad ideas. They're just a few examples, and they're proof of how valuable the drafting process truly can be of streamlining characters and concepts while removing any elements likely to upset the tone or prove problematic. But sadly, sometimes filmmakers and executives take things too far, throwing out great concepts, characters, endings, and even entire scripts in pursuit of something broader and, generally speaking, less satisfying. Not that all these films are bad, in fact some are amazing, but in all cases the first drafts offered something a little more than what we ended up with. So with that in mind, I'm Will for What Culture, and here are 10 first draft movie ideas better than what we got. Number 10, Newt and Hicks survive, Alien 3. In 1987, legendary cyberpunk author William Gibson was approached to write a script for Alien 3, and with Sigourney Weaver's return as the franchise heroine Ripley very much in doubt, Gibson was charged with continuing the series in her absence. His Alien 3 begins with Ripley entering a coma after her cyrotube is damaged, shifting the focus to Hicks and Bishop, while Newt is safely shipped back to Earth to live with her grandparents. The action-packed script sees Hicks leading a desperate battle to fend off a xenomorph infestation on the space station anchor point, concluding with a sequel-bait ending where humanity bands together to locate and destroy the xenomorph homeworld. Despite the script being well received by fans, the film's producers found it dull. In a small act of solace, however, the script was adapted into an Audible audiobook released just last month, and it's pretty damn great. Plus, it avoided killing off Newt and Hicks that happened in the final products, a creative choice that still haunts fans of James Cameron's Aliens to this day. Number 9, more Obi-Wan and Darth Maul, less Jar Jar and Qui-GON, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. George Lucas's first draft of Star Wars Episode 1 differed quite significantly from the final film. Most of all, Qui-Gon Jinn doesn't show up until Coruscant, with Obi-Wan Kenobi taking on much of Qui-Gon's eventual duties, as the script places a greater emphasis on his relationship with a young Anakin Skywalker. Darth Maul, by far the most disappointingly underserved character across the prequels, has more of a presence in the film and says more than a whole 3 lines. Jar Jar is also more tolerable in this draft, he's in the film less, and doesn't speak with the gobbledygook present in the end product. Number 8, Jim saves Aurora's life by waking her up, Passengers. The original script for the sci-fi romance Passengers ended up on the prestigious blacklist of best unproduced screenplays back in 2007, and with damn fine reason. This version of the script does a much better job of depicting the spaceship Avalon's systematic malfunctions, leading to a third act where all 5,000 of the sleeping colonist pods are ejected into space. This completely shifts the quandary surrounding Jim waking Aurora up from cyrosleep to combat his own loneliness, because if he hadn't done so, Aurora would have been fired into space with the other colonists. It's a tidy way of combating the potentially troubling nature of the central romance, rather than having Jim waking up Aurora and effectively dooming her in the process, as happened in the actual film. Number 7, Hancock is the villain, Hancock. Hancock started out as a spec script written in 1996 called Tonight He Comes, and baby, it is wild. The evidently R-rated material takes a far darker and more sinister approach to the superhero genre, fashioning John Hancock as a tortured superhuman who ends up killing police officers and considers raping a woman. Yeah, they were probably right to leave that out, actually, but nevertheless, Hancock wears a cape reminiscent of Superman and occasionally tries to be good, despite him clearly being the true villain of the story. He ultimately crosses paths with the Longfellow family and attempts to steal the wife Mary away from her sad sack husband Horace. This leads to Hancock nearly forcing himself on Mary and slaughtering the aforementioned fleet of cops ahead of a final battle with Horace. After almost killing Horace and believing he's killed Mary, Hancock attempts in vain to kill himself, after which he finally vows to be a good guy. It's undeniably rough around the edges, but it sure is a lot more interesting than what we ended up with. Number 6, MUTT doesn't exist and Marion gets to do more, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Back in May 2002, Frank Darabont was hired to write the prospective fourth Indiana Jones film and eventually turned in the script for Indiana Jones and the City of Gods. Though many of the set pieces from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull had their genesis in this script, yeah, even the infamous fridge scene, Indy's widely loathed son Mutt is mercifully nowhere to be seen. Moreover, the script draws a much stronger focus on Indy's accelerating age rather than mostly ignoring it. But best of all, a larger role is afforded for Marion Ravenwood, who gets to sink her teeth into some meaty action rather than being reduced to birthing the franchise's heir apparent. But George Lucas ultimately rejected the script and decided to write a treatment himself, which, just like the prequels, didn't go too well. Number 5, basically everything, Prometheus. Passengers sadly wasn't the first and only time John Spaihts had one of his scripts molested by a studio that thought it knew better, as Spaihts' original script for Prometheus, a more direct Alien prequel called Alien Engineers, differs significantly from the final film, and almost always for the better. First and foremost, the moon the scientists touch down on is indeed LV-426 from Alien, and the film as a whole places a more direct emphasis on leading into the events of Ridley Scott's 1979 classic. Elsewhere, David is more overtly villainous and directly impregnates female lead Watts with an alien embryo by placing a facehugger on her face. This leads to a showdown between Watts and the xenomorph removed from her womb in much the same way the trilobite was in Prometheus, which she kills by chainsawing its head off. The story ends with Watts reunited with David and forming an uneasy alliance, just as pyramids can be seen lighting up in the distance, suggesting more engineers are about to pay them a visit. Other different details include the reduced presence of the black goo, which is instead described as a swarm of scarab-like insects, and Peter Whalen never appears on the ship, nor is Vickers his daughter. The entire subplot about him wishing to extend his life is absent, as his motivations are purely financial to acquire the engineer's planet's terraforming tech, basically tightening everything up very nicely. Number 4, Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham are the same person. Robin Hood, 2010. One of the many early drafts for Ridley Scott's 2010 Robin Hood made the curious yet undeniably insane decision to have the Sheriff of Nottingham chasing his own tail by dropping a Fight Club-esque reveal that Robin and the Sheriff would actually be the same person. Scriptwriter William Martell ran down the various aborted scripts in a lengthy blog post, with this version featuring the Sheriff essentially pursuing himself for most of the movie. But of course it was eventually thrown out, with Martell speculating that someone found the premise too silly. However, it still sounds a lot more interesting than the by-the-numbers, unoriginal tale we got. Number 3, actually adapting the novel, World War Z. The original draft of World War Z attempted to adapt Max Brooks' beloved zombie novel by having government employee protagonist Jerry, a character fabricated for the movie, travel the world and collect stories from survivors of the zombie apocalypse. It was a neat device to allow the film to invoke many of the accounts from Brooks' novel, while not just devolving into a blatant anthology film of disparate zombie narratives. But the script was thrown out once director Mark Forster came on board, who, in the writer's own words, wanted to make a big, huge action movie that wasn't terribly smart and had big, huge set pieces in it. They just decided to call it World War Z for marketing reasons because it basically has nothing to do with the book. Number 2, Cap ends up with Sharon Carter, Avengers Endgame. This is a highly subjective one, as Cap's ultimate fate in Endgame was loved by many, but also maligned by many as well. In interviews following Avengers Endgame's release, screenwriters Stephen McFeely and Christopher Marcus detailed many of the possible storylines they envisioned while writing the film. This included a draft where Captain America was living with Agent 13, aka Sharon Carter, following the events of Infinity War. As a through timeline for Cap's future, this ending feels very natural and organic, if only because it allows him to move on with his life rather than be both literally and figuratively reliving the past. You gotta assume that McFeely and Marcus ditched the Steve-Sharon love-in for 2 reasons. Everyone was too weirded out by that kiss in Civil War, and the sentimental fan service of Steve/Peggy was too high to resist. Number 1, it ends with a surreal Johnny Depp cameo, Birdman. Birdman is amazing, but the ending is decidedly ambiguous and contentious. And it turns out that the Best Picture and Best Director winning drama almost concluded in an even crazier fashion than it actually did. In the first draft, after Thompson shoots himself on stage, a seamless single take would reveal that Thompson received rave reviews for his performance as we pass backstage to a dressing room. Inside, Johnny Depp is kitting himself up in the Regan-Thompson wig, while a Pirates of the Caribbean poster is visible in the background, and Depp says to himself in his Jack Sparrow voice, "What the fuck are we doing here, mate?" The Birdman co-writer said of the planned ending, it was going to be the satire of the endless loop of that, and frankly it sounds absolutely hilarious and considerably tighter as a close to the film than the ambiguous ones the writers went with, great though it undoubtedly is. And there you have it folks, 10 first draft movie ideas better than what we got. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter at @USlideDogU if you want to talk about films, TV, comics, or any of that other good stuff. I'm Will for What Culture, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time.